Hi there, this is Mr. Blay. This morning we're going to be working on slope-intercept form equations. Specifically, I've got a couple examples here of slope-intercept form equations that have fractions in them. The fractions tend to give people a little bit of trouble, so I've got three examples I'm going to work through that all have fractions, and we'll show you how to deal with those fractions in the equation. So you can see in the first example here, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form. It says for a line with m equal to half. So again, this right here is our slope. Okay? And it says it also passes through the point -2, 4. All right, so the main thing to remember here is that we are using the form of an equation that y equals mx plus b. Okay, so again, this right here is our slope, and then the b value here is the y-intercept. So since we already know the slope, because it was given to us here, we can already put that into the equation. So we actually have half x plus b. The other piece of information that we're given is actually over here in the point. What this actually gives us is that all ordered pairs are actually an x and then a y value. So we're going to use this -2 in our equation as the x value. We're going to use the 4 as the y value. So when you plug them in, and they will look like a 4, you have equal to half times -2 plus b, like so. All right. Now again, I know this tends to be where people have a little bit more trouble because now you have to start multiplying in your fractions. So off to the side, I'm just going to show you how you can calculate this right here, which is half times -2. The main thing to do with any whole numbers is to put them over the number 1. So you will actually, and I'll put this in a box over here, you'll actually have half times -2 over 1. And when you're multiplying fractions, you just multiply straight across. So straight across the top and then straight across the bottom. So this is just 1 times -2, which equals -2. And then we have 2 times 1, which equals 2. The only thing you have to make sure that you do is make sure that you simplify this. In other words, the two numbers you get, make sure that you actually divide them out. So -2 divided by 2 is -1. All right, so if we go back over to our equation, this box right here is actually the number -1. All right, and if you finish solving for b, you're gonna add 1 to both sides. These cancel, and so b is equivalent to 5. Right here. Okay. Now, keep in mind, b is not your answer. You still need to go back and write an equation in this form. So remember, it should be y equals, you've got half times x because that's your slope, and then you put in this b value, which you just found, which is the number 5. This will actually be your answer. Just gives you a better idea of how to work with some of those fractions. So in my next example, which you can kind of see here, all right, this one says it wants you to write an equation for a line with a slope of 3/4 and passes through the point 5, -6. So we're really going to do the same process we did in the first one. We're going to plug in this value here for m. We're going to plug in the 5 for our x, and we're going to plug in the -6 for our y. So here you have y. Whoops, sorry. We're going to plug in the -6 for our y. So -6 is our y value, 3/4 is our slope value, 5 is our x value, and then you have plus b. Because again, you're always using the y equals mx plus b formula. Okay, so now you can already see that this is going to be a little trickier than the first one, because we have to do 3/4 times 5. So again, over here, I'll show you what 3/4 times 5 looks like. Notice again that I'm doing 5 over 1. Any whole numbers, always put them over 1 and then just multiply straight across. So this comes out to 3 times 5, which is 15, and 4 times 1, which is 4. If I were you, I would leave it in this form until you get to kind of the end of the equation. Okay, so we go back to the equation, take your 15 over 4 and put it here. Okay, so instead of those two things being multiplied together, okay, so the b comes down, you still have your equal sign, you still have -6. So since this is a positive fraction, you're going to subtract it to the other side. Now this tends to be where the problem is going to get a little bit more challenging. So if you subtract this to the other side, these two will cancel out. So that means your b is by itself. So whatever you get when you subtract -6 minus 15 over 4, that is going to be your b value. So again, off to the side, I'm going to do this out. So I'm going to have -6, which I'm always going to put over a 1 because it's a whole number. I will subtract 15 over 4. Okay. Now subtraction is a little bit more complicated than multiplication because you can't just go straight across. The one thing you have to make sure of is you have to make sure that this denominator and this denominator are the same. You can see that they're not. That's a 1 and that's a 4. So if you change this to a 4 by multiplying it by 4, you also change its top partner by multiplying it by 4. Okay? So what you actually end up with is you end up with on the top over here, you've got -24 over 4, and then you're subtracting 15 over 4. Okay? Now you can just subtract straight across. Do -24 minus 15, okay? Which is going to give you -39 over 4. Notice I did not subtract the denominator stays the same. So this value right here, okay, this is your b value. So if you go back to your equation, the b is equal to -39 over 4. And honestly, for our work and for IXL, you can actually leave it as an improper fraction just like this. Okay? So now that you know your b value, okay, you can actually take this and put it in your equation. So your final equation, again, your slope is 3/4, your b value is -39 over 4. So your equation is y equals 3/4 x minus 39 over 4. And there you go. That is your equation. I know it looks a little gross, especially with that fraction, but keep in mind that multiplying and subtracting fractions is done a little bit differently. So use this kind of as an example when you're doing your work. Okay? Also make sure we didn't have to this time because we have an odd and an even number, but if you came out to numbers like 38 over 4, make sure that you reduce those by essentially dividing by 2 or dividing by an even number that goes into both of them. So the last example is a little bit more difficult, but I wanted to show you how to do this with 2 points. All right, so this one says write an equation for a line that passes through these 2 points. Okay, so the main thing you have to do here is the process is still going to be similar to what we did here, but the first thing is we're going to have to find the slope. So to find our slope, when you're dealing with 2 points, you always subtract the 2 y values and then divide by the number you get when you subtract the 2 x values. So again, this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. So over here, you have 5 minus 7 in the numerator, and you have 12 minus 20 in the denominator. So this gives you -2 over -8. Now again, this is like I was just talking about a minute ago. Notice that these are both even numbers. Notice also that they're both negatives. You need to reduce these, okay? So 2 negatives actually make a positive. So those negatives are going to become a positive. 2 over 8 actually reduces to 1 over 4. So this number right here is our slope. This is our m value. Now, just like the other problems up here, okay, we can use that m value and plug in one of the 2 points. It does not matter which one. I'm going to use the second one because the numbers are a little bit smaller. So that will make our life a little bit easier. Okay, so plug in 12 for x, 5 for y, and 1/4 for m. So you'll get 5 equals 1/4 times 12 plus b. Okay. So again, we have this fraction here, and we need to figure out what these are when you multiply them together. Okay. So for our purposes, if we go off to the side here, we have 1/4 times 12 over 1. Now again, with multiplication, you don't need a common denominator. So just go straight across, 12 times 1 and 4 times 1. That equals 12 over 4, which again, simplify to the number 3. Okay. So this box right here, okay, you're going to take that number 3 and you're going to plug it in right here. So you have 5 equals 3 plus b. finish solving it by subtracting 3 to the other side. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So now you have your slope, which is here, and you have your y-intercept, which is here, and you put them together in your final equation. So y equals 1/4 of x plus 2. Hopefully some of this helps you out with some of the work that you guys are doing, specifically multiplying out your fractions and also subtracting or adding your fractions. Again, addition of fractions would be the same as the subtraction, where you need that common denominator. All right, hope this helps with some of your slope-intercept form equations.